Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. And we're back again for another really cool episode of Off the Comma, and the podcast continues to grow. Our storytelling community continues to grow. We continue to hear such personal and powerful stories from people just like ourselves who are unafraid of sharing and talking about their experiences and growing through the telling of the story. And then, of course, sharing all of that wisdom and all of that with all of us out here. And so this week is no exception. Also, what's not an exception this week is, as the storytelling community is growing, I'm getting to meet a lot of folks who were not already in my circle and people that I don't know. And this week we're going to be talking to Myles Youngblood, and he and I haven't met yet. We're going to be meeting for the first time through the telling of his story. So I'm very excited to learn about Myles and to hear his story this week. And you know what? I'm going to stop rambling because it's not about me. It's about you this week, Myles. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Myles, tell everybody, how would you like to be known? And what else would you like for folks to know about you before we actually get into your story?
For sure. So hello, everybody. Thank you, Paul, so much for the introduction and allowing me to be on your platform. I greatly appreciate it. In terms of how do I want to be known, that's a good question. I want to be known as influential, just somebody that people look at for inspiration. Like, dang, like he really is doing his thing, and he's inspiring me to do my thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same lane in terms of podcasting or business, but whatever people are aspiring to do or whatever greatness means to them. So that's pretty much what I want to be remembered for sure.
Nice. What else would you like folks to know before we actually get into your story? Things that you do, things you're into, whatever you'd like to share.
Oh man, things that I do. I get this question a lot because people ask me, "Oh, what do I do for fun?" And it's like, a lot of things I do for fun. Like a lot of people probably don't think it's fun, but I'm a podcaster myself. My podcast is Beyond Ordinary, and I love talking to people just like you, Paul, which is why I started why I started my podcast, because it's something that I am passionate about, and I'll get into like the deeper story later in the episode, because I can't come to find out that what I was doing before, I wasn't really passionate about. It wasn't something I could see myself doing long term. And so I found podcasting. I was like, you know what? And even before I started my own show, like I was an avid podcast listener. I listened to Alex Hormozi's podcast, Chris Williamson's podcast, and Stephen Bartlett's podcast. Those are probably the top three that I listened to. And so I wanted to start my own show. So I work on my podcast for fun. I also, hang out with friends. We go out to the bars a lot. That's actually what we about to do tonight. We have me and my friends from DC. As we've gotten older, we haven't hung out nearly as much. So anytime like we can link up and get together, we do that. So we about to do that tonight. And yeah, that's what I like to do for fun, for sure.
Nice. Well, I'm already hearing this theme of, and anytime I reflect something back, correct me if I'm off base. I'm just kind of testing what I think I heard. I'm hearing themes of, in addition to what you said about inspiration and influence, but also connection and maybe a sense of community there too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely trying to build a audience, build a community, because ultimately what I want to do, like when it's all said and done, is I want to have an academy for people to learn financial literacy, especially for Black people, because financial literacy is just something that's just not taught in school. Period. It's one of those things that I think that the 1% teach their kids, and they don't want that in the school system. You know what I mean? And so I want to
Mm-hmm.
make an academy or school or program or something to help people just be more financially literate, because I'm 26 years old. I don't mind dating myself. I'm 26 years old. I'll be 27 in about next month. And I
Mm.
remember growing up, I used to always hear people talk about, people make 100,000, 120,000, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, which I thought was crazy. I'm like, there's no way you can make that much money and live paycheck to paycheck. But now that I've been out of school for several years now, and I've seen people make, I literally have seen people actually make six figures and literally can't, who
Mm-hmm.
live paycheck for the paycheck. And it's honestly crazy. And, sometimes you might hear on the news of, different, you know, isms that go around for why people don't get paid as much, gender gap, all that stuff, which I'm not saying that's not true. That is true. But there are certain things that people are doing that are hindering their own financial growth. And so I want to be able to create an academy to teach people, especially younger people. I'm talking about like middle school, high school, get them ready before they even hit, adolescence,
Mm-hmm.
to get them prepared for the real world. So, I mean, ultimately, that's what I want to be known for. So,
Yeah. Well, you're off to a good start. I mean, already putting that intention out there, you've got your platforms where you can reach people, you're creating your audience. I so appreciate what you said too, because a couple of key things, right? Like, first of all, it's not taught in school. Everybody's talking about this right now, and I say that very generously, but people are talking now about why aren't we learning these things in school? You hit the nail on the head, right? Like the 1% is they're teaching their family, right? I don't know her name or handle off the top of my head because I've only seen a handful of her posts, but there's a young Black woman on TikTok who talks about this. She went to school at Harvard or Yale,
okay.
and she comes on her platform and educates folks about the things you don't know, the behaviors of the people with the wealthy mindset or what have you. And she talks about these things, and the not just the financial intelligence, but like the emotional intelligence behind it, all that things. So you're definitely hitting a vein
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
richness that people could benefit from.
Sometimes I like how what you brought up about it's not even necessarily 100% just like the actual knowledge. Sometimes it is like having that emotional intelligence and having your emotions in check. Because a lot of what I shouldn't say a lot, but what I've seen for the people that do make six figures, that are living paycheck to paycheck, they a lot of it is ego. It's like, oh, I have to upgrade my apartment to kind of keep up with the Joneses or whatever, have this
Mm.
type of car or whatever, even though it's stretching their income thin. And so that's something I think that's one of those things that it is a financial literacy problem, but when you dig a little deeper, it's more of a emotional problem. Like, why do you feel the need to have to upgrade your apartment right now? And even if you do upgrade your
Mm.
apartment, like you can upgrade your apartment and maybe pay, I don't know, maybe $200-300 more as one thing. But I know somebody who upgraded their apartment. Their rent was under $1,000, and then their apartment now was, I think, 20. I think it was 24, 2,500, something crazy. And I was just like, damn, like, you know what I mean? Like, like, if your rent was
Mm.
900, you could still upgrade to an apartment that's like 1,500, 1,600. Get something that's that's still an upgrade, but it's not like, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
checks and balances.
Well, and I believe what you're also describing too is like there's so much more with the knowledge. Then there's all kinds of different trade-offs you can make. Like I think of my own example. It's like I want to live in a certain neighborhood. I want to live downtown because I want to be able to walk places, not have to use my car and stuff like that. Downtown's more expensive. Well, then do I still need a 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment? No, like I can get by with a studio, right? And still be exactly where I want to be and live the life I want to live. So
Uh,
oh, that's a whole like let's go to your podcast. And I know you're going to tell us about it at the end. Like your podcast is where we can unpack some of that
oh
too. But
yeah, for sure.
I want to get to the last thing, the thing that really stuck that I believe you're probably going to be talking about in your programs with folks is she talked about the mindset of the wealthy and that they do things and they take risks and so forth because they just expect to succeed, because the environment that they live in, it's just assumed they're going to succeed. But that how can everybody adopt that same mindset?
Oh man,
right?
if I could flip my camera like that you hit the nail on the head. I have this painting in my room right now. I hung it up probably a month ago. It says "Take the risk or lose the chance," and it's a Monopoly theme. And that's something that
Mm.
I'm gonna eventually get. That's gonna be one of my next tattoos because for me personally, I I definitely am a risk taker. I have a whole portfolio of cryptocurrencies, and I've done made some borderline risky moves, but I do it because one, I studied the market and I've been studying for the past 4 years, so it's not as risky to me. But two, I would much rather, like it says, take the risk than lose the chance. I don't want to be see an
Mm.
opportunity and then be scared of not seizing that opportunity and then live for years, decades, whatever it may be, to the fact that I lost, my chance and I have to live with regret for the
Mm.
rest of my life. So I'm not about to do that. So yeah.
Hmm. I know we haven't gotten into your story yet, but I feel like this is helping us get to know you, and this is part of your story, right? And just selfishly, I just enjoy the hell out of this conversation already. So all right, Myles, let's get started. One of the things that I do with my guests before we even get to the 5 questions is as you think ahead to the conversation we're going to have, or rather the story you're going to share with
Mhm.
us over the next 40, 45 minutes or so, what would be your intention for you, for yourself, for today in the telling of your story? What's your intention for this conversation?
um My intention is twofold. I always want to give people some value, um, or some knowledge, or a whole like all the game, all the lessons that I learned along the ways in my journey. So that's for your audience. Now in terms of for me, what I'm personally trying to, I guess, gain, or why I wanted to come on your platform is you talked about, being open and vulnerable and honest. And I've come to realize something about myself this year, that I haven't necessarily been as open. I like that. I actually was in a relationship for about 2 years that ended. It ended a while ago. Ended, I think, in January of this year. And I've come to realize that my lack of being vulnerable kind of led to that downfall. So I'm still trying to unpack those layers, but not
Mm.
being afraid to just tell my story and speak about what I want to speak on. I think that a lot of people, or not a lot of people, I would say that my hesitancy before I started my podcast, I don't think I went on my first episode for like, I think 3 or 4 months or something like that, and I just felt that I didn't want to. I don't, and I'm gonna say this right now. I'm not trying to pose that I'm any sort of expert. Like you know what I mean. I'm just gonna talk about my experiences and what has worked for me. I'm not gonna ever get out here and say that, hey, like this is gonna work. This is gonna make you $1 million. Da da da. Whatever that it may be.
Mm.
Or this is how you go viral, because my business is about content and stuff like that. No, I'm just gonna speak upon what I could speak on, which has given me more so the ability to be okay with speaking on your platform or other platforms that people might have other guests that might be more qualified than me, which is fine. And I'm happy that they're able to get high quality guests, but not feel intimidated and feel like I'm lesser than or not worthy of being on the podcast because I don't have the same credentials. So yeah.
Mm. Well, first of all, an acknowledgement for you. You're in the right place because that's exactly what I want to create here is that, we are all everyday people who are sharing our experience, celebrating our own wins and successes, being willing to share our learnings and so forth.
Mhm.
And, we're not, famous celebrities and so forth. But even if, someone famous, with a lot of celebrity hood or whatever wanted to be on the show, they're still going to go through the same questions. And so what you just said you wanted to create is exactly why we want you here. So thank you for that. My intention is to support you in that intention,
Mhm.
create a space for you to be able to share and to be able to open up to something like you said,
But
and that someone out there is going to hear your story. They're going to see a little bit of themselves in you and your story, and they're going to feel bit more connected, a little less alone. And in the best of cases, they're going to feel a little bit more inspired and empowered to do something that they've been secretly wanting to do.
yeah, that's the hope. That's the plan. That's the hope. Hope to inspire the people. That's it.
Wonderful. Let's do it. Myles, first question. Where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Sitting on a comma. I do. Can you refresh me on sitting on a comma? Because I remember reading this question, and I had a direction I wanted to take this, but I can't remember what being on a comma meant.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and actually it's good that you brought that up, right? So the metaphor as I wrote it and I experienced it, I wrote about it in 2020, was that sitting on a comma is what we were all doing during the pandemic because everybody was kind of on pause, everybody was kind of stuck, nobody really knew where it was going.
Mm.
But that the point was is that it's not a period, there's still more story to be written, and
Mhm.
we're all kind of sitting on this collective comma. And since then, I've taken it in a direction, doesn't matter, but I leave it up to the guest to decide what that really means for them and then where it takes their story. So at minimum,
Oh,
sitting on a comma is like, where have you been stuck? Right.
yeah.
But people come on here and interpret it in all kinds of really cool and fascinating ways too.
Okay.
Is that enough to kind of prompt you where you wanted
Absolutely.
to go?
Yep. Got it. All right.
Awesome.
So where I was stuck, probably the biggest comma of I would say my later adolescent years was in 2020. Because unfortunately, I guess fortunately or unfortunately, I had to hit ups and downs. But I graduated college in 2020. I was in
Mm,
class in 2020. So what that meant was I didn't get a college graduation. I didn't get. I also was, joining a fraternity at the time. And when you join a fraternity, you have like this big celebration where you get revealed and everybody sees that you out there and whatnot. I didn't get one
mhm.
of those either. Because I was joining my senior year, so at that time, it was a pretty low time in my life because it was supposed to be filled with a whole bunch of joy, and it wasn't. It was just abruptly cut. And then from that point moving forward, I I also didn't have a job when I first graduated college, which was a huge disappointment in my life because I was in the school of business and everybody told me that, hey, if you're in the school of business, like everybody in the school of business gets paid, everybody in the school of business, you're good, da da da. So when I got to the end and I realized that wasn't me, I was like, oh, wow, I must be a mess up. You know what I mean? And so fast forward to that. Fast forward maybe like a year or two. Yeah, about a year or two. Right. This is 2020, so that was the last big drop in the market. We had a V-shaped recovery, all that stuff. So during that time, like I always knew growing up that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Right. My dad had his own cleaning business, so I always saw him like doing his thing, and I was like, you know what, I want to be my own boss, but I just don't know where that's going to take me. So I started doing a whole bunch of stuff, day trading, drop shipping, and whatnot. Lost so much money, so much.
Mm,
And then I finally came across this business model called social media marketing agencies, or just an agency for short, or SMMA for short. And I was going to help real estate agents with their Facebook ads, right? And I think I picked that niche because I was like, oh, I'm kind of familiar with real estate, and I've seen some people who like start their own agencies in real estate. I think like I could do it. I could probably do this, and whatnot. And the only success I really got was I did somebody's Facebook ads for free. I actually just texted him recently, just to see how he was. This is back in let me see the timeline of this. This is like mid 2022, probably October of 2022. And I remember, so he eventually, we did our free trial. We parted ways. I was still trying to find paid clients and whatnot. And I just remembered, I remember this exact day. I had been fed up. I was cold calling, just trying to just pound the pavement as hard as I could. And I got on a sales call with this one guy who swore up and down that he wasn't, just pulling my leg and trying to, like, he acted like he was about it, like he was going to sign up, da da da. And we had a call set up, a follow-up call the next day. And that day specifically, I was in California because that's where I'm originally from. And I was going to go to the bachelor party for one of my friends from high school. And I was supposed to have a call like at 2 hours before I was about to leave my house, and he didn't show up. And I remember when he didn't show up, I was like, that was it. I was done with it. And so at this point, this is this is February of 2023. So from about January, February, I was stuck. I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to still have an agency and whatnot. And you could just look up social media marketing agencies on YouTube, and you could find so many resources, people talking about this, people talking about that. And I came across this opportunity to start an agency on, doing short form content for like podcasters and YouTubers. And I actually had a colleague who actually started his own agency, doing something similar. And what he started, I think he started in March, and he told me about it. And I was like, that's very interesting. And I remember seeing a bunch of videos about people saying, oh, you shouldn't start this type of agency because of X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. So I saw what he was doing. And then I was going back and I was watching those videos. And the client that he had was like doing some sort of food, right? Like he was like making recipes and whatnot. And so I had always been interested like in the market and crypto. And that's also part of my story too. And so I was like, you know what? What if I'll go to all the YouTubers that like I watch like about crypto and stocks and stuff, and I take their long form content and make it into shorts. I like being the finance lane, right? So that's what I did. And the very first client that I ended up getting in June of 2023 was his name is Chris Sane, and he's like has like I think he has 600,000 subs on YouTube, and he was one of the first YouTubers I was watching in 2020 when I was like trying to like get my hustle on with stocks and stuff like that. So it was really a full circle moment that somebody that I watched and admired on screen is somebody I have a working relationship with. And he also was one of the first people that came on my podcast and did something in person. And it was so crazy because I remember exactly where I was. I was at the bar, and I texted him and I said, hey, like, can you come at on my pod, like I'm starting a podcast, you mind coming on the show? Oh, also, mind you, literally all my clients agreed to come on my podcast, which, I appreciate every last one of them. But him specifically, I just said, hey, you mind coming on the podcast? And in my head, I thought we were going to do it virtually, but I didn't specify. I just said, yo, can you come on the podcast? And he texted me back. He said, oh yeah. He said, yeah, I'm gonna fly to DC. Just let me know the date. And I was like, oh, I didn't think he was going to do that. I was like, oh wow, I didn't specify that I wanted to do it virtually, but if you want to do it in person and he's offering to come out to DC, I'm gonna make sure like I had to make sure to book a nice setup, and everything. And it was great. And that was one of my best episodes that I did. He helped me promote it and everything. So I greatly appreciate Chris and everything that he's been able to do and help my podcast, help my business, with also sending me referral clients and everything like that. So that was a time. I know that was a long-winded answer, but to sum it up, man, like I was lost in January, February, March. And it was just one of these moments. And I think I explained it this way to my dad, not about last year when I think he asked me about this. And I told him that at that moment was pretty much rock bottom. And the reason why I was rock bottom is because I skipped a lot of things that happened in between then. But I had spent a lot of money and lost a lot of money. I'm talking about like, I think at this point I was down like $20,000, $25,000, something crazy like that. And when you sitting there down $25,000 and you just switch business models, you're not trying to do the real estate ads agency anymore, and you have this belief that you're just going to keep going and everything's going to work out, but you have no plan. You have no idea what you're going to do. Like literally the only thing that I had at that point was the will and the drive to not give up until I figure everything out. And here I am in 2024, almost 2025, and things have. I didn't think that things would be going this well for me.
Myles, can I jump in for a moment? And first of all, some acknowledgments and then a little reflection. You've shared so much. You said it's long-winded. No, is perfect because it's your story. And I so appreciate, you being able to describe the difficult parts and the feelings of being stuck. And, like so many people, not only is the transition after college can be, leave a lot of uncertainty, but for anyone who went through that phase during the pandemic, then it's really just, oh shit, right? And yet you took risks, you put yourself out there, and then there were some setbacks. But what's interesting is how what I notice, and you correct me where I'm wrong, is even in the uncertainty, it seemed like there was this taking stock, and it's like you've got all these different lanes at your disposal. There's the I've been exploring kind of sales and marketing and trying to help creators, but I really have a core passion for finance and crypto and different ways of earning. And then these lanes come together like almost out of the blue. It's like, wait a minute, how can I have both? And completely reframe the whole thing. And instead of being a finance person or being a social media person, like, let me put those two on top of each other. Found this creative way, which you initiated that. I mean, let me talk to these finance creators to see how I can support them. And then lo and behold, you've got these connections. You yourself are starting a podcast. You brought all these lanes together. They all came together in this intersection that has been serving you since. Not perfectly. I mean, there's still challenges. Like you said, you were down financially, but through the stuck, you did find inspiration, but it was also like, what have I got in my hand that I can do something with? That's what I'm hearing so far from your story.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely trying to merge the two, and it worked perfectly. Now I have a lot. I mean, the majority of my clientele are the people in the finance space. Also, mainly because of referrals. Actually, one of them I just started posting for her today, doing her content today. That was a referral from a client that I've been working with. It's been almost a year. I think it's been like 10 months, and just being able to tap in. And I think I asked him, I said, hey, there's this coin that you had mentioned on your channel. I just want to know what your thoughts are. I just got in, da, da, da. And he said, oh, well, I think it's probably going to go to this market cap, and which is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to rub elbows with people that understand, finance, crypto, stocks and whatnot, and be able to ask them personal questions that I have. So yeah. And so it's definitely been good to me.
Yeah. What a brilliant way to continue to, further your own learning, develop your own skill sets. Like you're, I guess the way it looks from over here on this side of the microphone is you get to continue to stay in school and you're getting paid to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's it literally exactly what it is. It's like going to school but the teacher's paying you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're learning directly from the masters. You get to skip the classroom, so to speak, other than the one you create for yourself. Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's jump to the second question, and then obviously I think you're going to go back and forth, and there sounds
Yeah,
like
no
there's
problem.
more to tell in the story. So,
Oh yeah, there's definitely just way way more.
okay, good. Well, let me ask the question, and then you kind of bring it together. I'm not cutting off the story at all. So, as you look back at this comma that you've described so far, and the parts that you haven't even described, there's the opening. What has this created for you at this point? Like, what did sitting on this comma create for you?
I would say that one of the biggest things that it's done for me, especially as of recent, I didn't think about it at the time. It's when, because I got my first paying client of June of 2023, and probably as of, I want to say like April-ish of 2024, I've come to realize to just sit back and really just be grateful for what I have. Be grateful that I was able to get through all of that. That I've been able to keep a roof over my head. Uh, and I've just been very grateful and very blessed, especially like, in uncertain times right now. I've had colleagues that work at the same firm as me that ended up getting let go. Some of them had to move back home and all sorts of stuff. And I've been able to, it almost feel like I'm in a position to financially where it's like I get on the news and I hear it's doom and gloom. And that's not my situation. And I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying that more so that I've been very blessed to have been able to get out of that get off of that comma, been able to hustle and make things happen for myself and achieve the goals that I had set out for myself. So that was the biggest thing, just being grateful.
It also seems like some of the earlier struggle may have helped you or prepared you to weather this current climate that we're in. Like, obviously you said you're doing well and you're having success that you're very grateful for, but it almost seems like, and also having gone through some of what you've been through, you're kind of in a better position to be positioned right for it. Like,
Absolutely.
when I guess what I'm trying to say is like, when you've had to pare back and you've had to scale back in order to like make sure you could make it through the long haul, then when the environment around you gets tough, you're like, well, I was already ahead of the game on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm also better prepared now to thrive and succeed because it's not a shock to me at this point.
Exactly. And I would say probably the biggest thing that I've done that that describes what you were just talking about is the fact that I had lost, like I said earlier, I lost like 20-ish thousand dollars. Probably about 80 to 90% of that was in crypto. And that was because I was day trading and doing all kind of dumb stuff and being on leverage and not having to stop loss and all this other stuff. And so I decided, so that was from 2020, 2021, and I believe even a little bit of 2022, like probably the early parts of 2022. But then I stopped and I decided to do the agency model, which I was telling you about. But I always knew that, I remember in 2020 when I was like, damn, like if I had just like bought during the COVID dip, like everything would be fine, da da da. So I told myself, I'm like, look, as long, like I'm not gonna like lose sight of this opportunity. I'll be sure to keep my eye on Bitcoin and I'll be fine. And so literally in 2022, back when everybody was screaming doom and gloom, oh my goodness, the market was, gonna go to shit and whatnot, I was buying every week, every single week. And I still to this day buy every single, well, I do way more than buy every single week. I buy every single week on top of 10% of all the money that I earn. That's what I do now. But in 2022 and about 2023, I just bought every single week. And that's when Bitcoin was at like 18K, 15K, all that stuff. And now it's at like 65K. So I've been able to ride this big move and the even bigger move that I'm expecting to come, just by switching up what I was doing at the time. Instead of trying to trade on leverage and try and catch these moves here and there, I was like, nah, I'll just buy it and hold. And instead of setting my time horizon up for, oh, I'm trying to buy now and then sell next week and make some money, it's like, nah, I'm gonna buy this in 2022 now, and then I'll more than likely sell it by 2024, 2025. And here we are, 2.5 years later, and I'm really well positioned. But the thing is, circling back to your point about like, my past helping me now, is that if I had never gone through all those losses when in 2020 and 2021, I probably would have been all that dumb stuff I was doing then, I would have been doing now. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So that kind of taught me the lesson of what type of, I guess, quote unquote, trader or investor I want to be, and how to go about things a smarter way than I was doing before. So
it definitely influenced your strategy overall, and it is now paying off for you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
Before I get to the third question, you said there's more to the story to tell. If we look back on where were you sitting on a comma, what else would you add to the story before we kind of get
Oh,
into the experience of it?
that's funny. Okay, cool. So I would say another comma that I had, and this is way more recent, was probably, I think it was earlier this year, right? Yep, I think it was in January or February of this year, 2024. So the business model that I do, I'll dive in a little bit of that in whatnot. So what I do is I have a marketing agency for podcasters and YouTubers. A lot of the clients that I have been in the YouTube game for a long time, and they do a lot of long form content. And I, coded them. I'm like, hey, we could utilize this content if I take it, chop it up, make it look nice, and then make it into short form content and then post it on all platforms. And then we do this consistently every single day. So some of my clients, I'll give them 2 pieces of content a day. Some people I'll give 1 or 2 pieces of content. Some we do every other day. It just depends on what they're looking for.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Go ahead,
a lot of folks who are currently listening are folks like you and me who are solopreneurs starting their own business. There's a lot of coaches in my circle who are listening, and they're trying to figure out, like, how do I show up on social media? So I just want to define something for them in case they don't know, because I didn't know before. When you're referring to long form content, maybe these creators have created a 25, 35 or hour long video, and you're helping go through that and glean out good parts and put it into short pieces. They could either be used for promotional purposes or also for other audiences for other types of outcomes. Is that a fair summary of kind of the work that you're doing? Correct me or add to.
You hit the nail on the head. So that's pretty much what we do. Something to add to it is that what we do too is we post those shorts on all platforms. So we'll post it on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And the reason why you do that is because you never want to be pigeonholed on one platform, and it just expands your reach. So I've had clients, I have one now. Me and him are getting ready for his promotion. He has this subscription course and teaches people how to play poker and whatnot. And he actually had a really big following on Facebook. His biggest following is on YouTube, but his second biggest following is on Facebook. And so we've been posting over there, and I've been able to like really increase his reach over there. And I just remember like the Facebook took off and started going viral, and then eventually, and then the TikTok did, and then right now it's like YouTube is the leader now, but it's like each platform kind of took turns in terms of like, the views and building the audience.
Popularity. Yeah, exactly.
So
okay. I took you off your story.
Oh yeah. Just slightly. I'm trying to remember. Oh yes, I was explaining. I remember now. I was explaining. So that's what I do for my clients. And the thing is that it's a done for you service, right? So I have all my clients' social media accounts. Like I connected to my system that allows me to post on all platforms at the same time and whatnot. But because it's done for you, it's a lot. It takes a lot of labor and man hours. A lot of the labor isn't me. It's a lot. I have a team that does this, but it's still, in terms of the overall workflow of hours spent between everybody on my team to deliver the service, it's a lot, right? So what I was going to do was I was going to transition into a done with you model instead of a done for you. Now, not only was I going to transition to a done with you, but I was going to, for whatever reason, I wanted to pivot into like a whole different niche. So what I was going to do is I was going to help accountants. And now it's like, ooh, this sounds like kind of crazy. You pivoted completely. Yeah. So basically what ended up happening is like I was saying, like there's a lot of people that have these agencies. I'm not the first person that has this type of business model. So there's one dude on YouTube who he, was able to scale his agency. He pivoted out of doing, the short form stuff, did his own consulting company, and he had a YouTube. So I signed up for a call with him and we kind of like talked things out. And then I ended up signing up for his what you called his program, right? His consultant program. And so during that consultant program, that's kind of where I wanted to work with accountants and whatnot. Cool. So part of that program, what I had to do is to get clients, I had to run paid. I had to make a Facebook page. I had to post content to that Facebook page, like the vertical content that I was talking about, the shorts. And then I had to run paid ads to that content. And so I was like, all right, whatever, cool. So there's additional costs on top of this. I already knew that. I'm like, all right, let me do this. So one thing that they instructed me to do for content, because I'm not gonna lie, like getting up doing a podcast, right? Like I'll do my podcast. I've gotten my podcast to the point where all I got to do is hit record and I just send it off to my team, right? And then I have my editors make the shorts and everything like that. So I'm able to produce a new, short every single day because that's what I do for my clients. So obviously I'm gonna do it for myself. But when you have to get up and actually physically record the content every single day, that is a lot of work. And you have to script it, record it, all this stuff. And you got to do this every day. So I remember, and I told him that. And so my coach that I was assigned basically told me, he said, hey, like, what if you like did a podcast with your clients and use those clips? I know they're not accountants, but it'll at least act as social proof. I was like, you know what? All right, cool. Let me do that. So literally the first real episode of my podcast was actually on Zoom. And this is before I really took my podcast actually serious, where I wanted to actually grow. I was really just doing it just for, social proof, right? For my accounting company or program, whatever I was starting. And I remember one day I was listening to Alex Hormozy. He's one of the guys that I said earlier, his podcast I always listen to. I was listening to his podcast and he said, if the best case scenario happens, what you're doing, then what? So I was like, So I took a step back. I started closing my eyes and I started to kind of visualize, okay, what would my life be like if this accountant stuff goes? I was like, okay, I'll be making a lot of money, I'll be having to but I don't enjoy doing this content. I don't even really care for accountants. I'm really only doing it for content. And it also led me to think of his co-founder of school, Sam Ovens. One thing that he had said, he was one of those gurus that was talking about business and hustle and discipline and all this stuff for like years. Like you could look at all of his old content. But one thing that he's been saying as of recently, as of probably like the last year or so, he was saying he admit that he thought that in order to be, a successful entrepreneur, you just have to have the discipline to stick it through, which I don't think that's 100% not true. I don't you do need the discipline. But what he said is that you actually genuinely need to have the passion, because if you do not have the passion to do it, the discipline will only take you so far, but the passion will also help propel you forward.
Yeah.
So once I had heard those two things, Alex Hormozy saying at the time, I heard that for the first time, but I've been heard about the passion thing. So I was like, you know what? I really don't care for this whole consultant thing that I'm doing. This is kind of stupid. I don't even enjoy it. And then I was like, I actually kind of enjoyed, podcasting. So I was like, okay, well, if I did a podcast and I took it really serious, and go just as hard as that for the podcast as I do for my business, what does that look like? I'm like, okay, well, I'd probably be like some of my favorite podcasters, like Chris Williamson and Stephen Bartlett and all of them. And I was like, okay, cool. If you had their similar influence, lifestyle, all that stuff, talking to people that you actually want to, talk to and connecting with people, would you actually enjoy that? I was like, oh yeah, 100%. So I was like, all right, well, podcasting it is. So literally after that first episode, I actually started to take it serious. I ended up literally leaving or stopping that program I didn't get a refund or anything because like I kind of like I forfeit that because of other things. I wasn't
Mhm.
upset or anything, but basically another, several $1,000s down the drain. But that did help me to find that what I really want to do is actually like have influence and do that through podcasting as opposed to just
Yeah.
some stupid accounting stuff. So
And yet there's so many things I want to acknowledge you for, and that example shows us. And I can only self-reference, right? Everybody else out there will decide what resonates for them. But first of all, acknowledging you for the experimentation of it all, right? You're getting an idea. I think this sounds interesting. I have some reasons and some evidence and some justification. You go and do it. So I've seen experimentation show up, a lot through your story, and not being afraid to take risks, which you talked about that early on.
yep.
And then this other thing that just slams me right now in the chest, because I'm kind of in that phase. I'm in a season there too, where it's like, I got to try some things and I get caught up in perfectionism, and no, I already know it's not going to work out or whatever. But what I took from what you just shared with us is that I tried a thing and found out I didn't like it, and it led me to another thing. It's like, that's the whole point of experimenting, is you may like what you experiment and you may not like what you experiment. But if you don't like what you experiment with, then that's going to point you in some other direction. Either it's going to point you forward or it's going to point you back to something that's like, hey, I just realized I actually enjoyed that a lot more than I thought. And I probably couldn't have appreciated it as much until I put myself in this other situation. That's what I took. What would you add or change or revise about that?
I would just add to that you could really just learn a lesson or learn something from any experience, good or bad.
Mm.
The program that I bought was pretty expensive, and don't get me wrong. However, I'm still like, even when I look back at like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, I will still say that signing up for that program, even though I did not do that program for very long. It was supposed to
Mhm.
be a 4 month program, and I think I only did it for like 3 weeks, right? That will be a really big inflection point in my life, because if I had never signed up for that program, I probably would have never had the idea to do the podcast. So podcast was their idea for me to do. They wanted me to do it a different way in order to get
Mm.
business. But them telling me to do that, I was like, all right, cool, whatever. I'll just do a podcast. And I got on, and I was like, oh, this is doing this podcast is way better than sitting over here on my by my desk or by my white wall and trying to script out some content for
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, way better.
That's the
Way
thing
better.
about investments, right? Is like, and it can be scary and it's not easy, right? But like, you may be, the money you're spending may get you the thing that you're paying for. And there can be all kinds of other things that come out of it. Like you, I paid for a very expensive, well, it was a high cost coach training program worth every penny. In fact, I sing her praises all the time.
Mm,
What I also got from it was other things besides just being a coach. And there was all this, personal learning, but I would have done a podcast if I hadn't gone through that coach training program. And that was
mhm.
never on the radar, right? But it was something that interestingly came out, not on any of the bullet points, none of the objectives, none of the lesson plans, nothing. But that journey and that investment led me to a whole bunch of other things that I could not have predicted. Yeah. So sometimes do the thing and allow yourself to be surprised by what may come out on the other side, right?
Exactly. Just do the thing, and at least
Mm.
for me, and again, I'm pretty privileged to be able to say that. But like, how I operate is like, I can always get more money.
Mhm.
Like, I can't get more time. I can never get more.
Mm.
I can always get more money. So that's why for me, like, I'm not saying I'm gonna just blow money for no reason, but if it's an investment and the investment doesn't go well, that's fine, because it only takes one investment for me to recoup that
Mhm.
that money back. That, you know what I mean?
Mm.
However, the lessons that I learned from that investment that I made are going to be invaluable. So
Mm.
yeah.
You're already responding to the next question, so I'll ask it and you can add to it. As
Mhm.
you look back on these two commas that you've shared with us,
Right.
what have you learned about yourself? What else have you learned about yourself?
Uh, What have I learned about myself? I would say that I'm more so learned this about, the world around me, not necessarily just myself, but a lot of things should be that looked at as seasons. So when things go wrong, or even when things go right, there's going to be that's only going to be a season. So what I mean by that is like during those periods where, I wasn't necessarily successful, I wasn't where I wanted to be, instead of looking at that and acting like that is like, you know, that's it, right? Like this is all it's going to be. Look at it as, okay, this is a season. Meaning, and unfortunately, but or you could, depending on how you look at it, you don't have, well, yeah, you really don't have control over how long that season's going to be. The season's going to end, but the season could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, it could be a year. You know what I mean? And so more so on like the personal tip, when I was telling you that I was going through that breakup, I mean, it gets to me here and there, to a certain extent, like, but, and it comes and goes in waves. Sometimes like, some months I don't think about her at all, but some months I was like, oh shit, like I'm kind of down bad. But I, I keep telling myself that, look, this is a season. You know what I mean? This too shall pass. So, and I'll look back at this and really just be like, oh, and kind of and just laugh and smile at the fact that I really thought that, oh, this was end all be all. You know what I mean? So that's probably a really big thing that I took away from those things.
It's deep, because I think for many of us, and it sounds like that's what you're describing too, is for many of us, the human nature of it all is to want to hold on to things. So now we're sitting in attachment. And then you might get to the place where you finally do expect that and recognize that things come and go, right?
Mhm.
But man, what you just said, and I underlined it, we don't have control over how long a season will be. It's like you go from attachment to acceptance of seasonality, and then there's the and now, like, it could be fast, it could be slow, it could be short, it could be long. That's deep.
Yeah,
That's deep.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you the fourth question. You've kind of described this a little bit, but I'd love for you to tell us more or add to this. As you look back at the commas that you sat on, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on these commas?
Mm. I mean, my whole life has changed ever since those comments. I mean, the first one happened in 2022, and the other one happened earlier this year. So, um, I mean, in the grand scheme of my life, that isn't that much time, but it's crazy how things could change in a short span of time. Um, what has changed for me, at least, I told myself this when I started my podcast. I said, look, unless something fundamentally changes about how I see my life or what I want and my desires, I just got to keep going with the podcast. You know what I mean? Don't don't get one. So because all my clients are content creators, and one of them was telling me, he was like, look, like, it's gonna be, it's gonna be slow at
Mhm.
first, but you gonna just have to get over the hump and da da da. So I'm really not tripping about the growth of my channel, even though the growth has been pretty good. I would say for someone just starting off, but for me, it's really just trying to hone in on my craft. So one thing that I've been doing is I do a 90-day review. And I started my podcast 4 months ago, so I've only done one of them so far. The next one's going to be in November. But I do a 90-day review where I sit down and I look and I'm like, look, what episodes did well? What episodes didn't do well? Are there any common themes
Mm.
for the episodes? And yeah, and I learned a lot. I learned that a lot of the best episodes I had were the ones that like I collaborated on, whether that was, Instagram collaboration post, whether that was I sent it to my client and then they sent it out to their audience and then they watched it. Like any sort of collaboration was what you called one of my best episodes. And when I first, so in that first 30 days, I think I think I maybe only asked, I mean, how many episodes did I do? I think I did what, 15, 16, something like that. Other 16 episodes, I think I only asked maybe like 2 or 3 people if they could like post it to our audience or whatnot. I don't know. I just didn't feel right doing that. And then I went to Vid Summit and I linked up with one of my clients' friends who, you know, he has a lot. He's again a finance creator. He has like 600,000 on YouTube. He's been in the game for like 4 years, 5 years, something like that. And he told me, he said, Myles, one thing you didn't do, you never asked me to share it with my audience. And I was just like, and so we kind of had a conversation about that. So he said, always ask. So now what I do is I always be sure to, I mean, some people do it and some people don't. I don't really like, what I'm saying, I'm indifferent if people do it or not. I definitely appreciate those that do, but I'll like literally type out, I'll type out the caption for them so they could just copy and paste it. I'll send them the thumbnail and everything. I send it as a timed email because I know when these episodes are going to come out and whatnot. So I've been doing a lot better with that. And so, yeah, I've been, so, but I told myself I'll just give this podcasting, at least 2 years and then really sit back and reflect and be like, okay, well, after 2 years, where are you at? Okay. Do you even still want to do this? That's the first question. And then after that, move into like, how are we going to really level up the show? So
yeah. I hear in that these themes of do what you enjoy, you have a passion for.
Absolutely.
Constantly review and evaluate so that you can learn and make the ask. That's brilliant. I'm inclined to ask. Actually, no, I'm gonna leave it because I think your answer will come in this last question. So last of the 5 questions, and then we'll start to bring things to a close. Myles, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Are you talking about in general or are you talking about right now? I'm not really like on a comma. Well, I got,
yeah, kind of in general, like, looking back at this experience and others that you haven't shared, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
I think for me, getting off the comma just calls for a time of reflection. I know that's something that I've kind of parroted a lot throughout this interview, but the reason why is because that's something I wasn't doing. So telling a backstory, I have one of my colleagues introduced me to this thing that he did in terms of journaling, right? And this was in 2017. We went to the same middle school, college, middle school, high school, and college, and got the same degree at the same school. So like he's been really my right hand man for the longest time. So in 2017, he was telling me about how he started this journal. It was like the electronic journal that he types and whatnot. And so he told me about it in 2017, but I didn't start mine until 2018. And some people, like everybody journals differently. Some people write theirs down. Some people only do it weekly. I do mine every day. So I have every day. I have pretty some days I've skipped because, life was just hectic and I just forgot. But I have about like 98 to 99% of the days of my life from 2018 to now documented and I could go to. So if I want to look and see what was Myles Youngblood doing January 12th in 2019, what was going on in his life is right there. I wrote it out. Through journaling, one of my the biggest journal entry that I have every single year is on New Year's Eve. Because what I'll do is I'll write about in my journal. I typically write about my day, and then for New Year's Eve, I'll write my goals for the year. Did I hit them? Did I not? Why didn't I? And then the next goals for next year. And then I think last year I even implemented something where I did highlights for each month. So it takes hours to complete, even though I type it. But one thing I realized it in, this last year in 2023, I think it was, in 2023, I realized that sometimes what will happen is that I don't take the time to reflect or go back and revisit some of the goals. So I'll set the goals, but sometimes like some things will fundamentally change and I wouldn't change my goals, which is unfortunate because I might like pivot completely from something. And then I'll look back and I'll completely pivot on something in like, let's say, I don't know, like March or April. And then I'll get to December and then realize, damn, like I didn't hit my goal, but like I didn't hit my goal because I never went back and I didn't change it because of the circumstances changed. So I started. So now what I do is I I have a weekly reflection, which is more so supposed to tap into like myself, like how I'm doing in terms of my well-being, because a lot of my journal is basically just what I did and not necessarily how I'm feeling. So I'll do that every Sunday, but through that, I'm also like reviewing my goals and stuff. And I made sure this year because when I, in 20, at the end of last year, I didn't have the idea to podcast. So my goals were kind of old. So I made sure to change my goals once I switched to podcasting. I didn't want to make that mistake again. So that's why I'm really big on, sitting back and really just taking the time to reflect, evaluate, come up with a plan, and then just execute your plan.
What I so appreciate and love about what you just shared with us in that is that you really point out this fact that so many of us will set a goal and then the story becomes all about that goal and whether we did or didn't reach it. And then you get into the self-talk and the belief and all that kind of stuff. But you're saying set the goal and work towards it. And then if a new goal presents itself, change the goal, but always be working and visiting the plan so that even if you change goals, you can still be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So that's powerful. So I definitely, like you said, reflection and detailed reflection, intentional reflection, structured reflection, and evaluation is what I'm hearing. So
Yep, absolutely, 100%.
nice. Myles, let's bring these last two pieces to a close.
Cool.
And again, thank you for sharing your story as you've shared so far. First of all, how can people find you? I'm going to put all your links in the show notes so people can just click on them. But like, if people want to reach out to you, find out what you're involved with, they might be interested in your programs.
Right.
Walk us through, where can people find you? And
Absolutely. So my podcast is called Beyond Ordinary. It talks about the different facets of entrepreneurship because a lot of people see the end result. Few people consider the journey. I'm on Apple. I'm on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you like the visual element, you could find me on YouTube as well. The YouTube is just my first and last name though, Myles Youngblood, MYLES, and then Youngblood, YUNGBLOOD. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm very active over there. I post there every single day. I check my Instagram on the daily. So that is Myles Youngblood TV. And if you want to shoot me an email, my email is m.youngblood@sfgmedia.org. So whatever is best for you. If you're a person, if you DM me, I will definitely respond. I check my DMs pretty regularly. So Paul, thank you for
nice.
having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, one last thing before we wrap up, and you've been so generous with your story, and this podcast is all about sharing stories and lifting people up. What I like to do is this thing called an acknowledgments, where you get an opportunity to go within your circle. And if there's other people, causes, organizations, creators, it's your opportunity to lift up somebody else. So if you look within your circle, who might you acknowledge today?
So I want to acknowledge two of my line brothers that are also in my fraternity. Joshua Cole, he has his own photography business and he's been doing photography for 2 years, and he's really just been killing it. Been shooting with Kiki Palmer, going to the Met Gala. He's really been doing his thing. He actually was, I think, the second or third person that I interviewed on my podcast. So if you want to hear his story, you could go to my channel and watch his podcast. We did an episode over there. And then my other line brother, his name is Jalen Cromwell. He was a student athlete at Howard University, and he's really, and I'm not going to put his business out there, but he's gone through some things through his athletic career that are pretty inspiring and pretty admirable. And so he decided that he wants to continue to work with athletes, and so he started his business called Ice Titan, and he wants to really help athletes recover and rejuvenate. And so he has merchandise. He has merch. I believe he came out with his new roller to like roll out your muscles and stuff like that. So you could check him out.
Nice. We'll put their links in the acknowledgments. And I so appreciate you being able to give a voice to some other folks who are important to you. And everybody be sure to go and check these folks out and connect with them as well. Myles, again, thank you. And I've certainly taken a lot from your story today, and I know others will as well. I look forward to being in touch with you more, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.